Hello, welcome to Truth Armor Open Mic and News Analysis Show, where we analyze the news using these three questions. What's missing? These four questions. What's missing here? What's this a distraction from? Who is funding this? Who are their clients and bosses? All right, welcome. All right. Hey, welcome, Nick. All right. You want.
Hello.
What's up? I haven't seen you in a while.
Can you refresh my memory? What's an imperialist?
An imperialist is somebody who owns and runs an imperialist who runs an empire. Somebody who likes to conquer other lands and colonize their lands and also colonize their minds as well. So,
Did you know that today's the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation?
oh, really?
Yeah.
Didn't know.
Today, was I got notifications that today it says this day in history it's the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation,
Oh, it is, yeah. January 1st, 1863. So
where
that's
he abolished slavery.
162 years ago. Well, that's the thing, right? He didn't exactly abolish slavery. He abolished uh, slavery in specific regions, in specific states. And so it was still kind of going on. Um, it wasn't a nationwide abolishment. See, for example, he says here the proclamation only applied to areas in rebellion, not to border states that remain loyal to the Union or to Confederate areas already under Union control. So, in other words, it was never about freeing the slaves, it was about destabilizing the enemy. It was because he only abolished it in the areas that are not under his control, anyways, where the rebels, the Confederates, uh, were controlling those areas. So he said he told those slaves, "Hey, you are free now. You know, you can come here." And so it made them rebel and try to escape, and that destabilized the Confederate economy. So it was about winning the war. It wasn't about helping the slaves.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and then it goes on to say, depending on Union victory, The proclamation's effectiveness relied on the Union Army's ability to enforce it. It was the Union victory in the Civil War that ultimately secured the freedom of millions of enslaved people. And then that paved the way for the 13th Amendment, right? Lincoln and his allies recognized that a constitutional amendment was necessary to permanently abolish slavery. And the 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865. Do you know what the 13th Amendment says, though?
No.
It made an exception for prison slavery. So you are no longer a slave, it said, except as punishment for a crime. So if you're in prison, if you've been criminalized and convicted, then you become a slave of the prison, basically. And this is why after 1865, after the 13th Amendment was ratified by all the states, what the southern states started doing was to start creating new and more laws that would criminalize even the most basic frivolous things that black people were doing. That's why you have laws against loitering and trespassing, laws that are, these are non-violent crimes. You're not harming anybody by walking around. You're basically getting arrested just for walking around, right? And they call it trespassing. And once you're arrested and put in prison, you're a slave again. That's why even to this day, they will arrest black people. They'll call the cops on black people for the smallest thing. That is why, because they still want to see black people as slaves. And in fact, it's not just inside the prison. What they've been doing in recent decades is that they've been leasing out the criminals outside the prison to work in McDonald's, to work in Sears or Costco or things like that, where they've leased it with these corporations. So they're now working for these corporations for free, and they're leased out. They're allowed to come out of the prison for one day or for during those working hours, and then they're forced to go back to prison, and then they're forced to work for free. The worst thing are the firefighters, the enslaved firefighters who are prisoners, and now they're forced to fight fires, be in dangerous conditions for free or practically free. Sometimes they pay like 5 cents an hour or something like that. So slavery technically never really ended because of that loophole, right? That's even in the United States. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about today because globally, it's even worse, right? In Mauritania, for example, Mauritania did not outlaw slavery until 1981. Mauritania, the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, is a country in northern Africa, and they didn't even outlaw slavery until 1981, right? But they did not even criminalize slavery until 2007, which means technically you were still allowed to enslave people because nobody's going to enforce it. Nobody's going to criminalize you for keeping slaves. And even after 2007, after they finally said you're going to prison for enslaving people, right, which is actual criminalization, um, even to this day, since 2007, only 4 enslavers or slave owners have been convicted. And out of those 4, only two have been given long prison sentences of 10 to 15 years. Yes, that's what they consider long prison sentences. And everybody else, right, was given like a few months or 1 year or two. The other 2 were given like, I think, a year or two. So slavery is practically legal in Mauritania. And in fact, let me see the world map here. Uh, it's in northern Africa, but I think it's closer to the northwest. Let me say, because you have uh, okay, it's borders Western Sahara, Mali, Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone. Okay, Oh yeah, it is Northern Africa, but it's more on the western sides, right? So it's more like think of West Africa, I guess. Yeah, because Algeria and Morocco are right on top. So it's like a northwestern, Africa. Because you have Morocco, Algeria, Mali, Burkina Faso. Uh, so even Morocco and Algeria, all these countries, it's not legal, but they technically still have slavery, all these countries. Also Saudi Arabia, Dubai, UAE, they have what's known as a kafala system, which is a kind of indentured servitude, which is practically slavery because what they do is they trick um, Hindus in India and also Buddhists and like all these poor people in poor countries, right, who are poor because of colonization and ongoing imperialism, right? And they trick them in with these fake job offers. And and the thing is that you need a loan to even get to these countries, and the employers themselves are the ones who kind of lend the money for you to go there. And then when you get there, you basically pay back the loan by working for free. And sometimes, in fact, I don't think sometimes, I think in many cases, they even seize your passports and you can't really go back to your country. And you basically owe them free work for your entire life to pay back the loan. So, so yeah, that's really fucked up. And that's it's
Well, wasn't Thomas Jefferson didn't Thomas Jefferson own slaves?
yes, he did, of course, in the United States. Yes, he did. He
Um, did he ever free his slaves?
No, I don't think so. He never. Why would he, right? It's
Eh, and but and from what it looks like, it looks like um
okay. It
with this
says here. It says here he freed 10 out of over 600 slaves.
geez.
As so he did not free most of them, right? So yeah. In fact, during his lifetime, only two were freed. And in his will, he said he freed five enslaved men. And and then the slave that he raped, Sally Hemming, her children, Barbie and Harriet, were allowed to leave without formal emancipation, so like informal, and then two others. So that's 10 in total. So basically, so though even those 10, he did not free them in his lifetime, okay? He only freed five of them in his lifetime. The other five were in his will, saying that they would be free only after he died. So that's how fucked up it is. So no, basically the answer is no. He did not free his slaves, like most of them. Yeah.
Um, and for and with this president office, like we're going. It looks like we're going backwards, like because
Hmm.
he's just did you see what he did to the Kennedy Center? He changed the name of he broke the law. He did an illegal name change when Kennedy was alive. Kennedy made it to where not even Congress can change the name of his center. Because when John F. Kennedy built the Kennedy Center, he made it into law where no one can change the name of his
Hmm.
building.
Oh,
Not even Congress.
he wanted to add his name, right?
Yeah, but
He,
Trump did something unlawful. He basically changed it to Trump Kennedy Center.
oh, right.
Well, that didn't work out for him because ever since he put his name on it, Trump thought, oh, if I put my name on this, then a lot of people are going to come to it. He put his name on it, and ever since he put his name on that Kennedy Center, it went downhill. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
he
That's a
he
lawsuit. Yeah.
he had there was the singer that was supposed to perform at on New Year's Eve canceled um at the last second,
Hmm.
and um a bunch of other singers canceled. Not a lot of the was a lot of the singers were not happy, and they said nope, we're not going to be.
Hmm.
Um, but going back to what you said, like that that the cops are going that where the police are doing anything they can to arrest like the black people. Um,
Yeah. The 13th
I've
Amendment. Yeah.
I've seen that happen, and especially with ICE. The a major problem we have here in America now is with ICE.
Yeah, with ICE, it's worse now because what ICE is doing is sometimes they're deporting people not to their home countries, not to the country they're actually from, right? Which would be the legal thing to do, the ideal thing, right? Even if they're like not here legally or anything, even if all that's true, uh, you should be deported to your own country. Instead, Trump is deporting people to Sudan, where there is slavery in Sudan right now, and it's a civil war. It's literally the world's biggest displacement crisis, 14 million people displaced. It's a war zone. There's a genocide going on, and they're deporting people to the middle of a genocide. And then sometimes he deports people to Venezuela, not Venezuela, sorry, El Salvador, which is where there's a very infamous prison where people are put in very cruel conditions where the moment you get there, you're pushed down and pushed into the prison and your head is shaved, and you're beaten and all that and you're practically a slave. And and so since he's deporting them to El Salvador and actually paying El Salvador to do so is basically legal trafficking, is legal human trafficking and slavery, where El Salvador is now the enslaver and the US is selling human beings to El Salvador basically. So we're back to not only prison slavery but actual slavery and an actual slave trade between the United States and El Salvador now.
Yeah, and um, like they tried to deport Kilmar Brego Garcia, but
They no, they already did, and then they deported him to El Salvador, I believe. And then but there was a lawsuit and then eventually, El Salvador sent him back to the United States.
yeah, and the judge that's doing his case, Judge Waverly, um, the judge that's assigned to his case, the judge um decreed that he cannot be redetained.
Hmm.
So the judge basically said, you cannot detain them, you cannot redetain them, you cannot send them, you cannot deport them.
Hmm.
Um, and the judge has said he believes Kilmar Brego Garcia's case is going to be thrown out
Yes, I
because
just.
um, he says because Trump's lawyers, Trump's the attorneys they are not giving any evidence. They're not giving any
Mm-hmm.
evidence, factual evidence, why he should be deported. And
Mm-hmm.
so what the judge said is he can charge the attorneys with what they call vindictiveness,
Yes.
whereas they're being vindictive. They're not giving substantial evidence to state their case. They're just saying, "Oh, this is what this is what we have, and this is what we want you to do." Um, but um, and from what I've seen, ever since Trump got in office, it's the federal judges that are working nonstop. Um, um, especially a lot of the Trump appointed judges.
Yes.
They've shot down his cases. Case after
Mm-hmm.
case after case has been shut down.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's the federal judges that are doing most of the work because they are, um, and a lot of people can't trust the Supreme Court anymore because the Supreme Court, is the one that's pushing his cases, and
Mm-hmm.
um, the Supreme Court has become so corrupt with giving in and giving him what he wants. For example, like during the summer, they during the summer of 2024, they gave him um immunity. They made him immune,
Mm-hmm.
so he can do whatever he wants and not face criminal charges. Um,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the legal experts say this is not how the founders of America, the founding fathers, this is not what they intended. They did not intend a president to have that much power.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't intend for a president to have that much power, to hold that much power. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they intended for there to be a balanced power. That's why they created the Supreme Court. That's why they split the branches, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive.
Yes, there's supposed to be checks and balances.
Um, yeah, they split into different branches, so there'll be a balance of power. They didn't, um, because um, you remember Mad King George III?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, they said, that that under his reign, there was a lot of suffering, a lot of different things that happened. Um, but yeah, and um, from there was a couple cases that I've read of some very well known cases of racism. Like for example, uh, there was um one of the cases that I've heard of is there was this guy named Jacob Blake who was visiting his girlfriend, and um someone reported him for domestic violence, and the police came and they didn't handcuff him. The woman the woman officer, the white officer, she grabbed her taser and tased
Mm-hmm.
him when
Oh wow.
technically you're not supposed to do that. If he's not resisting and if he's not running, if he's not running off and he's not resisting, then you can't tase him.
Jacob Blake, he was shot in 2020, right? In Kenosha. But the black man
Um,
shot in 2020.
yeah, I think she shot him in the back. But he was still alive. But
Yeah, she
um,
shot him in the back 7 times. Wow.
yeah, the bullet shattered his spine where wasn't able wasn't able to walk.
Wow.
Um, and the saddest part was there was a his two kids were in the car, and
Oh.
at the time where
And
she
that must
shot him in the
have
back.
traumatized the poor kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the kids were traumatized. They
Yeah.
um the grandfather um took them to tried to take them to a psychiatrist to help with it with their trauma,
Mm.
and it didn't work. Their mind was damaged.
Mm.
Their
Yes.
memory was shattered because of the pain of what they had to witness.
Mm.
Um, and a very famous case, a very well known case, is the case of Trayvon Martin.
Mm.
Um, if you remember, Trayvon Martin was driving a motorcycle, was riding on a motorcycle, and in Los Angeles, these policemen pulled him over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they when he refused to get off the motorcycle, they uh they had they beat him up, they kicked him, they hit him with the bat.
Yeah, he was only 17.
Yeah, and they brutally murdered him. And
Mm-hmm.
when they went to trial, the judge um said that there was no evidence to convict him, and so he threw out and he let them walk free.
Yes, exactly. Actually, I think
But
that is what started the whole Black Lives Matter movement. That was the spark.
yeah, and they didn't the family didn't get um the family didn't get justice until after the George Floyd they
Mm-hmm.
after George Floyd case um um the mother filed for another trial and they did a retrial. Um
Mm-hmm.
but one of the worst cases I've seen was the George Floyd murder.
Derek Chauvin.
Yeah. Like he literally had his knee on the guy's neck, and George Floyd kept saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe."
Mm-hmm.
When he said that, he should have taken his knee off his neck,
Yeah, exactly.
and
He
it
was
was
on
the
his neck for 9 minutes.
yeah, and the police chief said that was not um a discussed that was not a part of the training. They did not train them to put their knee on people's neck. Um,
Mm.
yeah, the police chief. The case was so special that they brought in a they brought in a police chief, another chief of police. They brought in the chief of police for Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, the forensic expert. I don't know where that forensic expert got his license, because that forensic expert was saying, "Oh, he did not die from asphyxiation. He died from toxic fumes. He died from he
Mm-hmm.
um he could have died from the exhaust." Well, there was no car there,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
so how could he die from exhaust fumes when there is no car where his body was?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not to mention, there's a video. There was a video of him macing. Um, he violated the law when he maced a medical
Mm-hmm.
response team. He like there was a medical examiner. There was like the ambulance. He Derek Chauvin maced no Derek Chauvin's partner maced the paramedics when they came
Wait,
near.
this near George Floyd?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I did not know that. That's
Yeah,
very
it was
fucked
they
up.
were trying to pick up George Floyd, put him in the ambulance, but Derek Chauvin's partner was telling him move, move, and he kept macing them with mace. Every time they came near, he maced them.
Oh, okay.
Um, and they told and then um it was sad because there was this little girl was one of the witnesses that saw it. Um,
Mm-hmm. She took the
but
video, right?
yeah, and it traumatized her. She couldn't sleep for a couple days.
Wow.
But she said um that she couldn't sleep for a couple days, and but yeah, it's just very sad that this is the world we live in.
Yeah, in fact, he was sentenced to 22.5 years state sentence for murder and a 21-year federal sentence for violating George Floyd's civil rights. He appealed in November 2023. He's made multiple appeals, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. But in November 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his appeal, which is very good. So that upholds his state conviction on 21 years. And then he's currently trying to seek an appeal to overturn the federal conviction, which is a 21-year one. But even if that was overturned, right, he would still have to serve the 22.5-year state sentence. And the good thing is, in prison, he was stabbed 22 times by fellow inmate John Tuskak, he was a Mexican mafia gang. He attacked Chauvin with an improvised knife in a prison law library. And that guy has been arrested too for intending to commit murder. But uh, yeah, he himself was stabbed 22 times in prison because of what he did, you know. So he was probably trying to take revenge for George Floyd, you know. So he received the universe gave him its own, I guess, prison justice, I guess, you know.
But I'm surprised how he survived being stabbed 25 times.
Yeah, 22 times, yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised that he survived too. But that's what this article says here. It's on, I guess, policeone.com. It's there. Yeah.
And is there still slavery today in South Africa?
Oh, in South Africa, I don't know. I mean, there was apartheid until 1994, and then today there's no more apartheid politically, but economically, it's still like, you know, still kind of apartheid is going on. Uh, I think there's more slavery today in the world than maybe in several decades, I think. I know there's more global conflicts in the world in since in World War II, uh, which is very sad and very concerning, right? Okay, slavery legally doesn't exist. It was abolished in 1830s in South Africa, but modern forms of slavery, such as human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage, they do still exist. Uh, and they're technically illegal, right? But like I
Yes.
said, this is the stuff that happens even in my country of origin, Myanmar, because it's a war zone, right? Slavery is technically illegal, but what happens is the Chinese mafia, especially in the border areas, they set up shop, and again they trick, poor people in other countries, especially Hindus in India and also in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where they're experiencing a genocide, especially Afghanistan, and they lure them with fake job offers, and then when these usually Hindu men, and often sometimes Hindu women too, they come to these call centers, right? And then once they come in, instead of getting a job, they seize their passports, lock them up in a room, beat them up, starve them, and then force them to do scam calls and scam tags. And they become scammers and doing romance scams and scamming like Westerners out of billions of dollars. But the thing is, the scammers themselves got scammed and they're basically slaves. So same thing in South Africa, like there's human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage. In that form, it still exists, where people are often forced to work with little to no pay, you know, uh, especially on the farms and the mining operations. There's also illegal trafficking of people, especially women and children, sexual exploitation, forced labor. All of that is still happening in South Africa. That's so basically the world economy right now, the capitalist economy, right? The Abrahamic supremacist economy, especially the Christian economy, and also especially the Islamic economy. It cannot survive without slavery. They're dependent on slavery, uh, or at least debt bondage and indentured servitude in some form. That's why the minimum wage is like the federal minimum wage. Let me look up the federal minimum wage right now, right? Um, not the not the federal minimum wage right now is $16.90, right? No, actually, the minimum wage in California is $16.19, but the federal minimum wage is only $10.59. And so, 20 years ago, it was like, I think, uh, like 10 years ago, it was like $7 and something, right? And then about 20 years ago, it was more like $5 or something, you know. And so let me look up, I'm going to look up federal minimum wage last 30 years, right? Okay, there we go. So in 1995, right, in 1991, check this out. In 1991, the federal minimum wage was only $4.25 per hour. I mean, that's practically slavery. right? And then it increased to $5.15 in 1997, then jumped to $5.85 in 2007. So it took 10 years from 1997 to 2007, 10 years for it to jump just 70 cents. And it was, remember, it was $4.25 in 1991. So it took 26 years for it to increase by only $1.60. And then in 2008, it increased a little bit again. It became $6.55. And then in July 2009, it increased to $7.25. And let's see. And it's basically remained the same for the last 16 years. It's only this year, or actually next year, I think, it will finally increase to about $10 and something. So, yeah, here we go. The minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 for over 15 years. So if you think about that, right? If you multiply $7.25, which is basically the amount uh, multiplied by 40, multiplied by 4, right? Because 40 hours a week, right? So that's a monthly income of $1,160. That's gross. That doesn't even include the tax yet, right? If you what you actually get after taxes is probably only like $900 or something like that, right? Or 1,000, let's say 1,000. Now, how much rent are you paying right now, Nick?
I'm really pay rent. My mother pays rent.
Oh, you're living with your mom?
Yeah,
Do you know how much rent is she paying? Are you living in an apartment?
actually, no, I'm living in a house, so, she doesn't really pay rent with, it's, um,
She owns the
uh,
house?
yeah, she owns a house.
Oh, okay, so she's paying a mortgage, right?
Yes,
So it's a single family home.
yes.
So do you know how much is the mortgage?
Um, I don't really know.
Okay, which city are you in? Or which state are you in?
Florida,
Florida. And which city is it?
Port St. Lucie.
Wait, Horse and Lucy?
Yes.
How do you spell that? Uh, Never mind, it's fine. Is it close to Miami or something? Like which big city is
Yes.
it? Okay, all right. So let's see, Miami. So it's like a suburb of Miami, right?
It's close.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna look up, like, say, Florida. Actually, I'm gonna look up Florida minimum wage, right? So it says here, right now the Florida minimum wage is $14 an hour. It will increase to 15, right? On September 30th. So $14 an hour at 40 hour a week is 900 and no, it's 560. So it's about 2,000 a month. So let me see the rent. Miami, Florida, average rent, right? Let me just look up the rent for the studio apartment in Florida, right, in Miami. Okay, so it says here, the rent for a studio apartment, which is not even a one bedroom is that has no bedrooms, right? You're basically sleeping in your own living room. That's what it is. It can go from 1,000 to over 3,000, and uh, often the average is more like 2,100 or 2,800. That means if the minimum wage is like 14 or 15, your entire wage goes towards your rent. And that's for a studio apartment. That's if you're single, right? If you have a family, you're gonna need your wife to work too to survive. It's like, so if your entire wage goes towards your rent, how are you gonna eat? What money are you gonna spend for food, right? So again, this is still indentured servitude, if not practically slavery. It's not. I mean, because you're being paid so low, and this is better than 1991 at $4 and 15 cents. And the thing is, uh, it doesn't match the rent increases and the property increases. Uh, the minimum wage, I don't think, is matching the increase in rent, right? So let me look up. Here's what I want to do. Back when it was $4.15, right? This is what I want to do. You've inspired me, Nick, to look this up. Uh, by 40 multiplied by 4. So $664 is how much you made in 1991 if you worked your full-time 40-hour a week minimum wage job, right? So let's look up Florida rent, right, for a studio in 1991. Okay, so check this out. This is crazy. Remember when I said that the amount was like 600 and something, right? 660? Was that the number we got just now? So the
Yes.
average so the average rent for a studio apartment in Florida in 1991 was $659. Exactly the same as the minimum wage you were getting, which means basically 100% of your wage went towards your rent. That is crazy. That's fucked up. That's how people were living 30 years ago. And today, it's about the same. Because I remember when I calculated it's 2,000 and then the rent averages from 1,000 to 3,000, right? So actually it's getting worse because if you have to pay 3,000, you're making only 2,000, you're in the hole for 900, right? But if you somehow are lucky enough to get a cheap studio apartment for 1,200, it will probably be like a rundown, you know, very poor studio apartment. Then you save about $800 for food, right? But for some people, it's gonna be even worse. So it's like, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't match. It's like basically we're in the exact same situation in Florida, right? In 1991 as it is today.
Hmm.
This is why I do this show. I'm doing this kind of research right now in front of you, with you, right live. This is in real time. I'm doing this research. I wasn't even planning on doing this research, but since we're having this conversation, I decided to do that, and wow, it's very revealing.
Um, but how much do you pay monthly for where you live?
I don't because I live with my uncle and my this house is he owns this condo and it's paid off. The mortgage is paid off.
Oh,
Yeah, it's paid off because we were uh, my aunt, that's my uncle's wife. He got in a car accident. A school bus hit her 2 years ago, and which is very sad and tragic, of course. Her shoulder got broken, her head was bleeding, and as a result, we got a settlement, a pretty good chunk of money from that settlement, which enabled my uncle to pay off the mortgage and even retire. So we got lucky, I guess. But in the past, we were paying like this is like 20 or 30 years ago. We were paying like $1,300 for a two-bedroom apartment. Uh, and
geez.
like, and then we were paying. Then we moved to a one-bedroom, and we were paying like 900 for a one-bedroom. And this is back when the minimum wage was still like $7.50, right? So, so yeah, it's so this is why people are either homeless or hungry, right? Because it's like now you have a tough choice. Do you want to spend your money on a home or on food, right? And in fact, a significant number of homeless people actually have jobs. In fact, let me look it up. I This blew my mind the other day when I saw like how many homeless people actually have jobs because I thought, you know, the illusion, right? The propaganda they tell you is, oh, homeless people are lazy people without jobs, right? That's not true. How many homeless people? Oh, here we go. 40 to 60% of homeless people have jobs. And now I know why. Because they've made a choice to spend that money on food rather than rent. Because they would rather not go hungry than to have a home but no food in the house. Isn't it fucked up that this is the choice this country gives you?
Yeah, and it it's hurting a lot of people. A lot of people, um, and I think the homeless population has gotten worse,
Mm-hmm.
because of the amount of more because they keep raising the mortgage.
Yes, and they keep increasing the rent, actually. It's not the mortgage, it's the rent. This is why some people, this is why my uncle bought a house. Because they kept increasing the rent, he had to keep moving from apartment to apartment. Every time they raised the rent, they had to move to a different apartment that was cheaper. And he got tired of moving. So 16 years ago, uh, he finally just bought a condo because at the time it was really cheap. And, that's when the housing market had crashed, so everything was cheap. And luckily, he had a friend. He couldn't even afford it. Luckily, he had a friend who gave him a loan for the down payment. Like he needed 20,000 for the down payment, which he didn't. His friend loaned him the money, and using that loan, he was able to buy this condo, which now, and it was a 30-year mortgage, and he was able to pay it off in 15 years because of the settlement money. Now, yeah. So saying here, like some people even need to work 80 hours a week just for a one bedroom. All right.
But yeah, that's a lot of weeks.
That's a lot of hours. Yeah, it's like you're working 16-hour days basically. Yeah. In fact, my aunt used to work 12-hour days, 3 days a week as a CNA, certified nursing assistant, and it was really tough on her. Uh,
Yeah,
Anyway,
I work 3 days a week.
oh, you work 3 days a week?
Yes.
What do you do?
I work at a rest area, so where people are traveling and if they need to stop to go to the bathroom.
Oh, at a rest stop,
Yes.
or like a gas station with a little convenience store, right?
Well, not a gas station. It's a truck stop. So we're
Oh,
it's a truck stop slash rest stop. So where people
oh,
can if they need to walk their dog or if they need to go to the bathroom, we have picnic tables where they can sit.
mm,
And we have areas for them to walk the dog, and we have vending machines.
oh, I see. Okay. How much are you getting paid, if I may ask?
$15 an hour.
15, and you work 20 hours a week?
Yes,
Okay. That's so that's $300 a week or 1,200 a month. That's not too bad, and you're not paying rent because you live with your mom, right? Uh,
yes.
so are you saving that money, or are you spending it on food, or what are you
I'm
doing?
saving it.
You're saving it. That's good. Yeah, because your mom also buys you food, right? Like
Yes.
makes you dinner and stuff. Like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah, that's the way to do it now, right? I mean, this is how we do it in our countries. Like we all live together in one big family. And even in the United States, when we move, like a lot of families who, when they move, sometimes some families, the entire family moves together. Like we have three brothers. We have friends who have three brothers, and they they all live together. And when they married, the wives also live together. The children live together in the same house. And what they did is they put all of their money into one bank account. They pooled their resources and they saved money for so many years that eventually they were able to buy a 7-Eleven store. And then from the profits from that store, they were able to buy like two or three more stores. They were able to buy some more houses and sell and make money from renting those houses. And so now they've basically become millionaires, right? And that's the community mindset that we have. Whereas in the United States, your parents kick you out when you're only 18, uh, which is a very hyper individualistic mindset. And this is why so many people are struggling. It's one of many reasons why, you know, is hyper capitalism, hyper individualism, coupled with very predatory capitalism, enslaving mindset. You know. So, all right. So, do you want to share a poem?
I can try.
Okay.
Let me see. I'll do this one. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. As the chains break and as slavery ends, every story begins burning from the flame from within, rising, burning like the fire, burning in the mind. A fire that refuses to die, but only lives in the divine. With every legacy, with every path that we take, every journey, every story we make, with love that creates and elevates, we rise. For our story tells a story that will never die. truly strong and truly brave. Our love will only engage, burning in the flames, the fire in the mind, because we live, we thrive, because we survive. Because our spirit always stays alive. Poem.
Excellent. Um, can I share a poem?
Yes.
Okay. Before I share this poem, since it's my tradition in this, I just want to read the headlines and their bias distribution from Ground News, which is a website that tells you uh, labels the news and tells you whether it's left or right, and also labels the bias distribution of each headline. So, for example, there's this headline: Maduro open to talks with U.S. on drug trafficking and oil. Dodges on CIA drone. That's 68% of the sources are blue, which means reported by the left. You know, uh, so we have top NASA library closing amid cuts to staff laboratory. 34% center. China military drills near Taiwan, unnecessary raises tensions. CIA assesses Ukraine was not targeting a student resident and drone attack. That's 40% center. And of course, there is a lot of there's democracy uprising against the Islamic regime in Iran as well. So let me look at some what what the news is reporting on Iran. I'm gonna click follow for this. And Iran security force member killed as protests spread. That's 41% center. Iran executed at least 1,500 people in 2025, a 35-year record. That's a 40% center. All right. At least 2 dead in clashes between police and protesters in Iran. All right. All right. So now let's go into the poem. It's called Wild Geese, and it's kind of related to this topic of slavery. So for context, this was written in 2021 or 2022, and I found out that wild geese can fly higher than the 5th highest mountain in the world, but domesticated geese can't fly at all. So I wrote this as a metaphor, wrote this allegory or story as a metaphor for colonialism and its effects on our self-esteem and more. It's called The Tale of Reclaimed Flight, an allegory. We were once a proud people who could be seen flying freely far above mountains. Then creatures on the ground decided they wanted to civilize us because they ironically thought it's too uncivilized to fly freely instead of walking on the ground, tame and caged. They also looked at our lovemaking with envy and disgust, as our flying allowed us more flexibility, versatility, and indeed far more options for our moans of pleasure. Even the winds moaned with us. This too was another sign to them that we were uncouth boars. They developed fiery arrows, then guns, and then cannons to shoot us down and burn our wings and round us up and cage us. They spent generations enslaving us, clipped our wings, clipping our wings, teaching us new stories that flying was impossible, and therefore madness to think we could fly. But we kept trying anyways. So the next thing they did was to create a fake hierarchy, giving the most status, benefits, and privilege to those who walked on the ground and couldn't fly at all. Their wings disappeared completely. Those with clipped wings, who could jump high but not fly, were given crumbs at the table, but never the entire feast. And those who still flew from time to time were caged in mental institutions from time to time. Even their own people now shook their heads at them, calling them crazy fools. These different levels were called molds, and this hierarchical system was called moldism. Those who enacted this were called moldists or molders. The worst part was that over time, the formerly flying beings themselves not only believed in this system, but they started thinking this was literally part of their own religion. instead of something their oppressors had imposed on them. Their actual religion believed in the total opposite of this, actually. The molded themselves started policing each other, enacting moldism on themselves. The molders didn't even need to be there anymore. The gaslighting was truly complete. It took many years of small networks of educators who needed to educate both the molded and their allies that not only was this oppressive and false, but also that this was never a part of the flyers' religion, but they were often vehemently oppressed by all sides, sometimes even by the overzealous allies who still wanted to think, who still wanted to act as saviors and didn't want to accept that Moldism was never a part of the flyers' religion, even if they too wanted to end Moldism. But this was key to liberating the flyers from their long sleep and mental prison. It took many years of mental discipline, intellectual education, developing better physical warfare strategy, efficient, least wasteful, least physically violent as much as possible, but done when necessary as a last resort. And most importantly, small secret networks of resonance chambers weaving new stories for a counter-narrative warfare against both the molders and their sock puppets. But eventually, more and more people started flying. The flyers developed better defense strategies and also offense strategies. And the new tales, which were really reclamations of old tales, started seeping into the dreams of more and more until one day, so many were flying, we outnumbered them. On the ground, they all had to flee and learn how to fly too, or they'd fall onto the ground just out of exhaustion. And while exhausted and finally sitting instead of running away from themselves, they finally had a chance to think clearly. They finally could see clearly and hear their own thoughts of marvel instead of their previous irrational fears. Oh, wow. It's actually pretty cool to fly. Let them fly. And that's that part. Are you still there, Nick?
Oh, I'm here. I was saying, when was slavery made illegal in South Africa?
1830. So,
Wasn't Nelson Mandela that abolished slavery in Africa?
no, he abolished apartheid, not slavery.
Yeah.
So apartheid is different from slavery.
What's apartheid?
Um, so apartheid was abolished in 1994, and it wasn't Nelson Mandela that abolished it. It was um, President F.W. de Klerk, and, uh, and so he was actually a white guy, and then that led to the election of uh, Nelson Mandela in 1994. So it was. So if you want to know what apartheid is, that is like it's like a system of separation, right? In South Africa, it's basically segregation based on race. So similar to how United States had segregation, same thing. Apartheid is segregation. In South Africa, they called it apartheid because it comes from the word apart, right? You keep people apart or separate. So
Yes.
that's, yeah. So they kept the black people and the white people apart. In fact, it was literally illegal for white people and black people to marry each other or have babies with each other. That was illegal. So everything was separate. Uh, they couldn't work jobs together. They couldn't go to water fountains together. Exact same thing as the United States, except in the United States, segregation ended in, I think, 1965, I think. Let me look that up, when did segregation end? It ended in 1964 with the Civil Rights Act and then the Voting Rights Act 1965. Uh, and then before that, Supreme Court's 1954 decision in Brown versus Board of Education outlawed segregation in public schools. So it started with the Supreme Court, which outlawed segregation in public schools, and then the 1964 Act officially ended segregation once and for all. So that's United States. So South Africa took 26 more years to end apartheid, right? And this was just like 32 years ago, or 36 years ago. So all of this is like very recent, even 1964, that's like 62 years ago, so it's not, people want to say, oh, it's all in the past. No, it's not all in the past. And it's also still happening in many ways, right? We have prison slavery still. And then the fact that, white people keep calling the cops on black people all the time. That's a very covert way of maintaining segregation. And then there's also workplace discrimination, where, in fact, in California, they had to create a law that black women were allowed to grow their natural hair the way it is because there was so much discrimination against black hair, where black people were getting fired just for wearing their natural hair. So, yeah. Um, so let's see, when was the Crown Act? And that's California. That means in other states, this is still going on. This hair discrimination, right? So even the Crown Act in California did not happen until 2019, just 6 years ago. And such laws don't exist in other states. In other states, like Florida, their workplace hair discrimination is still allowed. Let me look it up. Let me see. Yep, in Florida, it's illegal. It's legal. You're allowed to discriminate against hair and fire people or punish people, your black employees, for just growing their natural hair. The only place in Florida where it's not allowed is Broward County in Miami Beach, where there are local laws, local ordinances protecting natural hairstyles like braids and twists and afros under the human rights laws. So they're on the local level is illegal, but at the state and federal level, there's no equivalent to California's Crown Act, and that's Florida. Other states are the same. So like, basically segregation is kind of basically legal in some ways. It's just more covert. So everything became more covert after 1964, where racism used to be overt, now it's covert. It's like, instead of saying the N-word, they would say, oh, look at this lazy black person, or look at this lazy Mexican, or look at this welfare queen, right? Or even DEI hire is a new N-word. So that's how racism works now in the United States. It's very like covert. It's like even in the publishing industry, right? 79% of books published are by white authors. And even the black and brown authors who do get published, they're basically tokens. They're like imperialist agents who only get published because they're telling the same old colonial stories in blackface or brownface. It's like Romeo and Juliet in Shanghai or something like that. So yeah. Well, it's 9:20. It's past my past my hour mark.
All
I'm
right.
supposed to do this for an hour only. So thank you so much for coming here, Nick, and staying with me the whole time.
All right. And I'll see you next Thursday.
Yes, in fact, let me plug myself before I go. I do have a few things going on besides this show. There is there's this show, of course, and also my book club. If you want to read the book with us, I have two book clubs now. We have a monthly book club called Historical Self-Reflection on my other page, where we're reading the book Uta. It's a biography of Uta. It's called Peacemaker, Uta and the Forgotten Quest for a Just War by Tammy U. It's about the third UN Secretary General from my country who saved the world really from nuclear annihilation, from nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then right now, starting next week at 7 o'clock on Zoom, we're doing a weekly book club for this book, The Beginning and End of Rape. We're reading a chapter a week for 8 weeks. It's about how basically because of the 1978 Supreme Court ruling, if you go to a tribal land, a native land, and rape or murder a woman, it's basically legal because you are the tribe is not allowed to prosecute you. The state is not allowed to prosecute you. You can only be arrested and prosecuted at the federal level. But often at the federal level, they don't take the cases, and the book talks about that. So isn't that really fucked up, Nick? Right? So it's really important to know that. So if you want to join this book club, if you want to read this book with me, let me know. Send me a DM. It will be on Zoom, and I'll send you a flyer. Okay.
All right.
All right. Peace and love, Nick. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Hi, author Sai Sarupa Iyer. Oh, you're watching. I didn't know you follow me. I like your books. Uh, Pasi Avishi. Uh, welcome, Sai Sarupa. Welcome. This is my open mic and news analysis show. I was about to wrap up, actually. All right. Peace and love.